Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at another Kickstarter that I just received. It's from Tabloid Games and it's called Icaion. It's the sequel to Mysthea. I'm going to tell you all about it right after this. Hey YouTube, this is Tech, and right before the lockdown hit, I received another game from Kickstarter. Now, after I played this game a couple of times, I decided to go through and paint all the miniatures. This is one I looked forward to quite a lot. I really had a great time with Mysthea, and I was anxious to get this game because it's not just one game, but actually two. Or to be more clear, this game combines with Mysthea to become a third game, which I actually haven't played yet. So like Mysthea, this game is competitive, and the Fall, which is the game that you get when you combine the two, is cooperative. So it'll be an entirely different way to play. So Icaion is a Euro-style pick up and deliver type game with miniatures. Really much of the game, you're going to be collecting crystals, which are called quome, and you'll be using them to do different things. And there's kind of a wide variety of different things that you do specifically with the different colors of quome. And there's a very colorful selection. I think there are 5 different kinds. And when I started this game, what you're looking at is the end of a 2-player game. And when this little collection of quome started, it was really well organized, but now it's just kind of a pile of crystals. So you'll be using quome to do a number of different things. The pink quome you'll use to investigate the Colossus. If you want to get the Colossus and pull out a shard, you'll have to have the amount of quome that's listed on this very small little number right here. You'll have to get the amount of quome that's listed in order to keep your shard and get some points with it later. You can also use it to build a number of these machines, and you'll see these machines are spread across the board. There's actually 3 different types. You can also use it to build wonders, which are basically like really bizarre looking monuments. You can also use it to eradicate parasites, which build up around the Colossus especially, and they come out randomly as you draw lands for the event cards. Too many parasites and the machines are destroyed. They can lay waste to entire regions on the board. You'll be playing one of 7 characters called Seekers, and what they do is they move around these different points on the board and do different things like pick up and deliver. Either picking up crystals, installing machines, investigating the Colossus for the crystals, putting up monuments or wonders. So another important aspect and pick up deliver element in this game is to move to the center here, which they call the city. And within the city, you're going to pick up these apparatus tiles. These apparatus tiles fit onto the side of your board, so eventually you'll have to travel to the same color as your apparatus tile here on the board. So once your Seeker ends up back here next to the area of the board that matches the color of the apparatus that you picked up, it can move from the side of your board here to actually being installed down below and get you some points right away, and also get you some points at the end of the game. Alright, so here are some of the character cards, and as you can see, they all have a special ability. They tell you how many cards, this is like half of what you get that defines your character. They tell you how many cards you can have in your hand, how many of those cards can be continuous or ongoing, and they tell you how much quome and what color quome you get to start with. There's really a wide variety of different characters to choose from, very far off from your typical genre. A lot of really unique and interesting varieties of different types of people you can be. These people they call Seekers. So the other half of what you get in your character, and again these are chosen randomly, is some equipment. And of course that equipment will give you another special ability. It continues on, giving you a few more cards for your hand, and tells you if you can add more continuous effects, and again more starting quome. There's a wide variety of different things, and this variability, changing this out in combination with the heroes or the Seekers that you'll be changing out, really makes it a different game every time. You'll have different abilities. You'll be a little bit better. Sometimes you can move faster. Sometimes you get more points when you do things. It really changes the game up, and it's made it quite a different game every time I've played it. Really smart to include sort of a two-part thing, almost like Scythe has the character and then the player board. It works very much like that in that it makes it a new game every time. Really, really neat. Now, alongside the game board, you're going to have this other area, and in this area, you're going to distribute the different cards throughout the round. So after everyone goes, one of these cards is going to hit the table. Now, these cards here represent all the different lands, and basically these circles and all these little sections along the map. They're all kind of color-coded for different types of lands. You've got like forests and water and mist and whatever this pink stuff is. Also on this board, you have 3 Colossus cards. Now, this game is played over 3 rounds, or I think they call them eras in this game. And every era, you're going to add one of these. That gets mixed in with all the different region cards and shuffled up. Then at the beginning, actually that would be, you'd start from here and go up. And then every round, you're going to pull one of these out. And at the top here, I'll tell you how much Quome to add to the rounds and whether or not it gets a parasite. If you were, let's say you're in Era 2 and the first card you draw happens to be the Colossus, it's going to have some stuff at the bottom that tells you what the Colossus does when it's activated. And at the bottom here, it's going to tell you how far the Colossus moves around the map. So you move the Colossus, you do what it says on the bottom of the card, and you ignore this for this particular round. And then it continues on, where you go and you expose a different colored land, you add whatever Quome or possibly a parasite, and you go until all 5 lands have been exposed. If you don't get all the Colossuses out by then you just end the round there, and then it goes on to the next era. So like in this example, the Colossus is moving 1. That simply means we take the Colossus, we move him here. Some of the later cards here will have the Colossus move up to 4 times around. So he actually really scoots around the map and causes all kinds of mayhem along the way. Alright, so in the different years of this game, you're going to be adding these shards. And as you investigate, you'll be pulling these out and checking the numbers to see how many pink Quome you have to pay to keep it. But there's kind of a trick, because when you go to add these back in, you're supposed to kind of dig in there blindly and put these in without looking at it. So here's a trick that I've learned. As you can see, there's a number on this side. Then on the opposite side, there's this notch. So holding this under the table, you can take your fingers and kind of feel around until you feel that notch. And once you do, you can be comfortable lifting this out from under the table just as it is. As you see inside the holes here, that notch is at the top. So if you find the notch, you can get it going right this way, and you can install it in here without actually knowing what the number is. And that's real important because you don't want to spoil the surprise of pulling this out and discovering that you just didn't have enough Quome to do what you needed to do. Also stored on this board are the curio cards. These curio cards do all kinds of different things. Usually use green Quome to activate them, although some of them are free. They give you all kinds of different things. The big thing to note on these, for one, they're the only way to attack one another. There's this particular card, and there's a couple of different versions of this card, and it'll allow you to attack a Seeker that's on the same space. The only other thing that attacks your Seeker in this game is the Colossus, but really it's a pretty, it's almost a non-event. It really doesn't cause a lot of damage. Now, a lot of these cards have this symbol here, and what that means is that you can kind of put this up above your tableau, and this effect is ongoing. So if you manage to get this out, you'll be able to do this throughout the game. But these add a great deal of variety to your game. They can give you other ways to make points. I mean, it's not really a point salad game, but it kind of is. I mean, there's There's a lot of different ways to generate points. There are some that are more efficient than others, but we've had a couple of really close games, and the proper use of these cards can really make a huge difference. Much like Mysthia, you'll have this tableau, and on it you'll have machines at the beginning of the game. As you go through and you remove machines onto the board, you open up other possibilities, other things that you can do a little bit better. They make the selections that you have just a little bit better, a little bit more movement, a little more places to put your quome when you collect it. And then at the end, you're kind of rewarded with a recharge of your power and some cards, or some of these have points and quome. You kind of get a bigger reward for this last one if you manage to place it. And these tableaus are really nice too. They're nice little slotted, double-sided boards, so your machines fit in there real nice. And it makes for, I don't know, it's pretty pleasant. I like this a lot better than I think what Mysthia had. And that goes for a lot of aspects of this game. Mysthia, to me, we had fun playing it. And we thought it was pretty fun, but it was kind of hard to convince people to come back to the table and play it more than once, just because we ended up with a pretty high player count. I think right off the bat, we were always playing with 4 players. And it really takes a long time to play with 4 players. This may be the same way, but because we've been in lockdown and it's my wife and my daughter, we've only played it 2 players and 3 players. And I can tell you, this game at that player count is still at least an hour and a half. An hour and a half to 2 hours. Your first game, maybe even 3. But it's so much more practical. Like, it really feels like it's a lot easier to pick up on this game than the other one. This game has a lot of iconography too, but not to the degree that Mysthia had. Much like Mysthia, we found ourselves perusing through the rulebook, kind of trying to figure out what some of these things were, but for the most part, once you've got it, and it doesn't come up as much. We have a really neat set of miniatures that comes with this particular game too, and I had fun painting them. I don't think that the characters they're kind of low resolution. I found some of them sort of difficult to paint, but they're all really unusual and neat. Like there's a lot of really unique characters in this that don't seem to kind of fit into those slotted genres of anything we've seen before. The machines too are very interesting. It really kind of invokes a lot of imagination to imagine some of these things grinding away, looking for quome, or processing it, or whatever they're doing. I hadn't even planned on painting all the machines, but I saw a BGG post where a person had painted some, and I thought, wow, they look really nice that way. So I went ahead and did mine too. I think a Kickstarter stretch goal also was the Wonders expansion, where they kind of where they came up with these like monument things, and all of them are very strange and bizarre. They actually add a lot to the game. They're an expansion. You don't have to use it. Maybe your first game, you can leave them out. But they do add a lot of points to the game. One thing that I found that was kind of lacking about this game is that last couple of rounds, especially if you've been real diligent about getting all your buildings out, or maybe you got your crystals squared away, you got your apparatuses squared away, you kind of are left with not a lot to do. Maybe just gather as much quome as you can if you have a slot available for it. Now, as you know, all good things come to an end, and one thing that they really did well with this game is managing the inserts. These inserts are probably some of the most practical and usable inserts I've ever seen. My Mysthia cards are sleeved, except for the Curio cards, which have a lot of space underneath. They're kind of nested underneath here, and there's still a lot of space, so if I do sleeve them eventually, they'll be fine. Plenty of room for the Colossus and all his shards underneath, all the quome shards. It just fits in right here. Next we got all the machines. They fit very nicely and sort of intuitively into their own insert right here. That just slides down like so. We got the heroes and the wonders and various other game components. Those all fit very nicely in here with no real issues. Sometimes it is kind of hard. You got to match the shapes up to figure out where they go, but that actually wasn't too difficult. And this guy that I forgot to mention was like a Kickstarter extra. And he fits in here nicely, even though he doesn't really have his own slot. So that's nice. Then we got all the tableau boards. And I kind of, I'll space them out a little bit just so they don't take up too much space. Then we have the player boards, which I just kind of put in like so. Finally, the rule book on top. And it all fits perfectly. There's room to spare, but not so much room that it's going to shift around a whole lot. But it packs up great. Not a lot of shifting around. Very good. And then when you go to open it up later, everything's where you put it. Awesome. This is super important because I like to store mine like this. In so many games that I have, if I turn them up on their side like this, all the contents just kind of fall out and it makes it kind of useless. It's important to note too that I also have all the stuff for the fall in here. I actually didn't put it in, but there's plenty of room to throw the fall's notebook in, and the extra cards are already sleeved and in there as well with those other cards. So it's not just Icaion stuff, it's all the fall stuff too. Fits in here great. I'm gonna go. There's actually kind of a lot to know. This is not a super light game, and yet it doesn't seem terribly complicated. In fact, compared to Mysthia, I thought that this was a lot more simple. They do have a little helper card for each of the factions that's got a couple of different things. One side's got their iconography and your actions that you can do in a round and your special actions that you can do. And the other side kind of tells you what the different colors of Quorum do, and they break down the iconography of the different things to kind of help you understand maybe what some of these cards read like. The curio cards, which are not nearly as complicated as they were in Mysthia, still do have a couple of different ways to interpret them. They've got a good example in the rule book that sort of breaks down the different ways that you can interpret them. But Mysthia had quite a large player aid that sort of spelled out all the different cards and stuff. And while they don't need quite that much, it would have been nice if they had a little bit more than just this little card to hand out. Even playing this game a couple of times, I did find too, I was kind of going back into the rules and checking things out. Part of that's just because we've been playing so many different games, and it's really hard. Like if I play this game and play a couple more games, it's hard to kind of come back to this one. I guess that's pretty understandable. But there really is a lot to this. There's a lot of depth. There's a lot of different things that you can do with this game. For me, I liked this game a lot better than Mysthia. It just seemed a little bit more interesting to me. I found a lot more I could do, interacting with these machines in different ways. And, and the apparatuses, and I think that coming in and investigating the Colossus is really neat. I like that much like Mysthia, this is a very colorful game. It's very vibrant. It's really pretty to look at on the desktop. It's kind of complicated, but not so complicated that I can't teach people and have fun with people that don't live and breathe board games. I don't have a lot of pick up and deliver games in my catalog of games here. So I was happy to get this one and have this one kind of fill that slot for me. Overall, I really like Icaion. I think it's a really fun game. It's got a lot of rules, it's got deep rules, but not so deep. It's got cool miniatures. It's a little bit more than just the dudes on the map. Actually, this whole thing could have been done with meeples, different types of meeples. But I'm glad they chose not to do that because I really enjoy all these kind of colorful and interesting miniatures. What's funny is back in the 80s or early 90s, a game like this would be all cardboard chits. And although and even with the exact same rules, I don't think it would be the same. That's all I got for this game. I really enjoy it. I think you might too. Be sure to check it out if you get a chance. That's all I got for now. Until next time, keep playing games. Have a great time, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.